For more than a decade, we were fed a story, a tale of faith, family, and a love that multiplied endlessly. We watched as they built homes, raised children, and lived a life most of us couldn't even picture. Their greatest strength, we were told, was their unity, this family bond. But that was never the truth. Their biggest asset wasn't a house, or even land. It was their story, the rights to their lives, their heartbreak, their triumphs, heir to millions. And even that, he commandeered. Welcome back to Reality Recap. What you are about to listen to is a story that has been brewing in the underbelly of the Ponderosa Pines of Flagstaff, a tale assembled through insider rumors, deep dive speculation, and exclusive hypothesis, portraying a picture so sinister, it redefines everything you believed you knew about this family. This is not only about who gets the patriarch's focus or who is fighting over property. This goes deep into the core of their cable television business empire. This is the tale of the grand TLC contract scam. Before we unveil this purported multi-million-dollar scheme, we need your assistance to make this story public. If you think the wives are owed justice, if you are tired of secrets and lies, take a second now and give that like button a hit. It lets YouTube know this story is important, and if you haven't joined the team yet, subscribe and hit the notification bell. You won't want to miss a single update as this plays out. Your support fuels these investigations. Now, let's get into it. The corporate illusion, bigger than a family, smaller than authentic partners. The concept of sister wives was easy. One guy, for ladies, and their 18 kids as one family unit. They marketed themselves as equal in parenting, religion, and money. When the TLC contract was negotiated in 2010, the public was made to think this was a family agreement, a profitable agreement intended to make everyone better off, boosting the whole family above financial stress. But behind the scenes of the show is production. A different world exists, a world not of collaboration, but of patriarchy, codified in corporate law. Friends who have monitored the Brown family's business paperwork over the years verify that shortly before the show premiered, a new corporation was quietly formed. For purposes of clarity, let's call it what it amounted to. Patriarch Productions, LLC. Legally speaking, the name could have been such as Kody Brown Family Entertainment, LLC, or Brown Family Media. Name is immaterial, structure is not. Legal analyst, Eliza Vance, described this arrangement as hauntingly typical in reality television, particularly among large extended families. Networks prefer ease. They do not wish to negotiate with 5 adults individually. It is a nuisance. They would rather have a single legal entity to contract with and pay. So families are incentivized, or nudged, to establish what is termed a loan-out corporation. The corporation then loans out the talent. In this instance, the entire Brown family to the production company. But here is the heartbreaking twist. Sources say Kody Brown was supposedly the sole member, sole manager, and sole owner of the company. The wives, Meri, Janelle, and Christine, women who had been with him for more than 50 years altogether, were not co-owners, they were not partners in the LLC. Legal insiders say they were rather placed as employees, or more likely, independent contractors, of Kody's corporation. Eliza Vance emphasized, it is like night and day as partners. They'd have a right to profits. They could review books, follow every dollar coming from the network, and help decide where to spend. They'd own the property, the show itself, but as freelancers, they get only their negotiated salary or fee, no rights to profits, no claim to the one-time TLC payment. In effect, they became company employees on their own reality show. Now, all of Kody's chimera pronouncements of being the head of the household have a sinister twist. It wasn't merely spiritual or patriarchal. It was corporate and legal, planned from the beginning. He wasn't just the head of the family, he was the CEO, and his wives were the employees. The scam sources say was deceptively simple. Let's talk numbers. For a show like Sister Wives with its longevity and success, the family could have been earning $2 to $4 million per season in later years. Conservatively, let's call it $2.5 million. That check from TLC didn't flow into a shared family account. It went directly to Patriarch Productions, LLC, Kody's company. From that time on, with Kody as CEO, all decisions were his to make. He decided how the talent got paid. In an early source privy to finances, the wives originally earned stipends or salaries that, while a big deal compared to their earlier bankruptcy issues, were pocket change relative to the total income. Let's guess, if each wife earned $150,000 per s. That amounts to $600,000, a hefty amount on the surface, but it left an estimated $1.9 million in untapped profit parked in Kody's corporate account. Profit which only he legally had the right to spend, invest, or wield. Profit the women whose lives provided the narrative had no rights over, it is claimed. They made the narrative, but he built the factory. And for more than a decade, that factory produced millions. The relocation to Las Vegas was staged for the audience as a sensational flight from religious intolerance, a family taking flight for asylum in the desert. It was an ideal high drama to kick off season 2. But imagine if the real motivation wasn't merely legal cover, but economic cover. What if the move allowed the perfect cover-up to cement Kody's new corporate control? Financial analyst Franklin Adler noted, when you're trying to obscure financial trails or set up a more complex system, a chaotic physical move is the perfect diversion. In the chaos of relocating 18 kids, selling homes, and rebuilding life, finances can be restructured without raising suspicion. Old joint accounts can vanish, new corporate accounts can quietly open, records can be lost. The disorder isn't an obstacle, it's a tool. Consider Vegas. For individual, lovely houses in an exclusive cul de-sac to viewers, it appeared as freedom for the wives, at last their own houses, their own autonomy. 656. But under our theory, the opposite was occurring. This was the beginning of their complete financial entrapment. Public property records affirm intricate financing on those homes. But insiders claim the down payments and initial mortgage payments weren't taken from shared family funds. They were from Kody's business accounts. That makes all the difference. If a corporation pays the mortgage, the corporation owns the power, Adler clarified. If the LLC is on the mortgage, it owns the house. If a wife walks out, her equity claim gets fuzzy. Is it her or the companies who wrote the checks? If her salary was merely shifted from the LLC to the bank, one could argue she never truly paid for it. The corporation did. That creates a chain of control that is almost impossible to break. A golden cage, and who assisted Kody in giving that cage a shine? By the time they'd established their home base in Las Vegas, a new figure of authority had fully emerged. She wasn't merely the fourth wife anymore. Based on our insider breakdown, Robyn Brown was rapidly becoming the de facto chief financial officer of the Brown Empire. Unlike the other wives, who began plural marriage as teenagers, Robyn had experienced a different existence. She'd been divorced, survived divorce, and worked through debt. She'd experienced the world, outside, credit, corporations. Contracts in ways the others hadn't. A longtime production crew member, asked to speak anonymously, framed it like this: Kody had the patriarchal power, but Robyn had the business playbook. During meetings, the original wives talked about feelings and family. Robyn would just shut up until she leaned over to whisper something to Kody. Then, out of the blue, Kody was discussing branding, strategy, and corporations. It was a tangible change. This source maintains Robyn was instrumental in perpetuating the system of corporations. She understood that being a simple employee was not where it was at. Ownership was the idea. And since Kody was already sole proprietor of the primary LLC, the next best thing was to set up a side company she could co-own with him. Step into my sister wife's closet. On television, it was sold as a joint family venture, a way for the wives to construct something together. But behind-the-scenes intrigue and business filings tell a different story. Under our theory, it was a Trojan horse. A means for Kody and Robyn to siphon profits from the core TLC entity into a second company they controlled in its entirety. As Adler put it, it is about legitimizing spending. If your television corporation makes $1 million in profits, You can't spend it willy-nilly on extravagances without warning signs and hefty tax loads. But you can invest $500,000 in a startup, call it an investment or a loan. Send the money from Patriarch Productions to my sister wife's closet. Poof, it is business, not personal. As soon as the money was fed into the new business, it was spent on almost anything. Business needs, design travel, merchandise that would never sell, supplies, even rented cars. The mechanism obscured the financial trail and moved the money one more step from its original source. The TLC revenue earned by all 5 family members and who worked the hardest at this alleged family business. Whereas the other wives viewed it as a mere side hustle, Robyn handled it like it was her career. Our guess is that she knew it was not just about jewelry, it was their financial safety net. This venture enabled Kody and Robyn to spend legally and strategically the money Kody tapped out from TLC. All the while, Meri, Janelle, and Christine lived off their salaries, assuming the rest of the funds went into a family piggy bank. But that piggy bank, insiders claim, was bleeding over into a company that benefited the CEO and his handpicked executive. The proof was right under their noses. Recall Robyn's persistent insistence on larger rental houses, her high-end parties, the pricey presents for her kids. While the original wives pinched pennies and monitored spending, Kody and Robyn appeared to work off of a completely separate, secret budget, a corporate budget. And then there was the Flagstaff debacle, the land of broken vows. 1119. If Las Vegas was the consolidation of Kody's financial might, Flagstaff was his effort to nail it down forever. The relocation to Coyote Pass was marketed to audiences as a dream come true, a means for the family to coexist on one vast piece of property. But sources portray something much more sinister. Coyote Pass was not a dream. It was a trap, a multi-million-dollar anchor used to bind the wives and their assets forever to Kody's corporate juggernaut. Here is the way it reportedly worked. The family bought Coyote Pass for $820,000. To pay for it, funds had to be combined. Janelle put up proceeds from her Vegas house. Christine Meri. They invested their hard-earned equity, their personal financial cushions, into a worthless plot of land. But who really owned it? That was never made clear on television. Titles and parcels were muddled intentionally. Our forensic accountant feels that the real funding for balloon payments and any development was always meant to come from one source, Patriarch Productions. As Franklin Adler described, the genius of the scheme is that he convinced the wives to give up their tangible personal assets, their houses, and transform them into a shared, undeveloped, illiquid asset. Land. Then he made development dependent on money he alone controlled through the LLC. This left the wives suddenly moneyless, their wealth invested in earth to ever reap a profit. To construct the houses they were guaranteed, they would have to depend solely upon Kody's generosity. They had to appeal to the CEO of Patriarch Productions to disperse profits earned on their own lives, to pay for those houses. In essence, their autonomy was taken away under the guise of constructing a family utopia. And when they moved to Flagstaff, nothing was constructed. The utopia promise never materialized. The only building that occurred was for Kody and Robyn, who bought an enormous mansion. On camera, it was justified in excuses. They needed room for younger kids. It was a savvy investment. It was the only available home. But our financial theory provides the simpler reality. The mansion was paid for by Patriarch Productions. Either bought outright or via down payments and mortgage servicing, it was yet another corporate asset masquerading as a family home, a CEO headquarters, and pad for his designated partner. The other wives waited in temporary rentals, and Janelle, an RV, hoping for promises not delivered. Entertainment lawyer Eliza Vance explained that this is where the alleged fraud becomes particularly wicked. The on-screen story presented a family, hoping to construct homes upon their property. The off-screen truth perhaps was a business quietly investing its profits into assets for the owner, while dangling its contractors with the promise of a future payment that would never be made. That is, the wives were paying for their own disenfranchisement. Every streaming tear, every fight with Kody, translated into ratings. more ratings translated into bigger paychecks from TLC. And those paychecks went directly back into the corporate black box, strengthening his grasp. They were trapped in a cycle, a feedback loop of feelings and financial exploitation. And for years, none of them really understood the extent of the trap. They felt they were family partners, running on trust, faith, and a background of shared hardship. It never occurred to them that the man they both followed spiritually and married might have constructed a corporate wall between him and them. A wall imperceptible to the eye but constructed of hard, unbending steel. But these walls were on the verge of cracking, because one wife, after years of passive agony, had finally reached the breaking point. She wasn't just dissolving a marriage, she was poised to apply a sledgehammer to the underpinnings of the purported fraud itself. Christine uttered the words, "I am leaving you. We are divorced." She departed more than personally. It signaled the start of Kody Brown's great financial reckoning. And as she departed, unknowingly she grasped the key to revealing the truth about the TLC contract scam. Her battle for economic independence would bring to light the lies Kody had supposedly hidden for more than a decade, paving the way for a courtroom fight of enormous proportion. Welcome back to Reality Recap, and our probe into the TLC contract scam. In Part 1, we exposed the bombshell theory of how Kody supposedly structured the family's television deal in Patriarch Productions LLC, with himself as the sole owner demoting his wives to the ranks of employees. We saw how this arrangement made him the boss of millions, while he and Robyn supposedly steered profits for their own benefit, leading to the Coyote Pass trap. But the most carefully stacked house of cards can fall with a single gust of wind. And that gust came from a woman who chose herself. This is where the empire started to unravel. Christine Brown did not simply leave Kody. She was walking away from a spiritual marriage, but she was also trying to make a corporate extraction, getting out of a money web intentionally laid out to ensnare her. By doing this, she was the first person to, essentially, audit Patriarch Productions. The initial battlefield was her home in Flagstaff. On television, the conflict was posed emotionally. Would Kody assist her? Would the family rally around her? But out of camera sight, sources claim, the actual struggle was over legal ownership and corporate claims. Entertainment attorney Eliza Vance defined the reason why this was the initial true test of the corporate model. If the theory is true, then the down payment on Christine's home was probably from the LLC, and the mortgage payments were paid out of it as well. So when Christine decided to sell the house and use the equity to begin again in Utah, Kody, being CEO, could make the hard legal argument. That is not your equity. That is the company's equity. You lived in a corporate-owned house. Housing was part of your salary. Thus the profit is the corporation's. This, we think, was the real cause of the long-fought battle over the sale of her house. It wasn't that Kody was losing a wife, it was that a CEO was losing a corporate asset, and more perilously, about establishing a precedent. If Christine got to walk away with her equity, what prevented the others from requesting the same? A source privy to the information characterized the ordeal as a fiscal hostage situation. Christine, they claim, had to fight for every penny. And to fight for it, she and her attorneys would have needed something Kody feared most, the books. Forensic accountant Franklin Adler explained that establishing her contributions equated to tracing the money. Where did the proceeds of her Vegas residence end up in Coyote Pass? Where did the Flagstaff down payment originate? Christine would argue that it was her fair share of the family money. Kody would argue that it was a corporate distribution. At this stage, the procedure would shift to discovery. Her attorneys would begin subpoenaing LLC bank statements, the original TLC contracts, and the operating agreement of the corporation. For a man who had prospered in obscurity, this would be his worst nightmare, sunlight breaking through. And it is here, our hypothesis comes into substance. Christine's house finally sold, and she collected approximately $700,000. Why would Kody-accused corporate autocrat suddenly fold? Our source identifies two reasons. First, the risk of discovery was just too great. A protracted court fight would reveal the whole corporate structure, not only to the general public, but to the other wives. Second, the possible backlash and expense of a lawsuit far exceeded the equity of Christine's property. Simply put, Kody couldn't risk the truth getting out. Second. And here's the key to the puzzle: Christine had a strong upper hand the others lacked. A new contract. By quitting, Christine was now more valuable to TLC than ever. The theatrics of her leaving were gold for ratings, and the network, now seeing her as a star in a new light, would have moved at lightning speed to sign her to a solo contract. Eliza Vance told us that a solo contract flips the equation. Christine suddenly had her own direct access to the network, her own agent, her own attorney. She was no longer talented on loan through Kody's company. She was her own person, her own brand. That gave her immense leverage in negotiations with Kody. She could now turn to him and say, either give me equity for my house, or I'll use my contract to tell all and expose the entire financial setup. It was a checkmate. Christine didn't simply walk away with money. She walked away with the blueprint. She proved it was possible to escape the corporate cage, and back in Flagstaff, another prisoner was taking careful notes. Janelle Brown. Janelle was always the pragmatist. The one who worked outside the home, knew about money, and was frequently characterized by Kody as his friend or business partner. The irony based on our research is that the most financially astute wife was purportedly the victim of the biggest business scam. Janelle thought for years that she and Kody had common financial objectives. She invested her savings in Coyote Pass. Sure, she was investing in retirement and a place for her boys. The RV she bought was emblematic of her commitment, a temporary give-up for eventual reward. Then, once Christine left, Janelle's frame of mind seemed to change. She watched Christine struggle and attain financial independence, and she started questioning her own circumstances. Kody once said to her, "You and I can headbutt, but not in front of the kids," Janelle replied. "It feels like I have to do everything alone." These arguments were not just about respect or his absence. Take a second look through an economic eye. Janelle was a significant shareholder in an investment that the CEO would not cultivate. She was insisting on action, a payoff for her investment, while Kody dodged, made excuses, and treated her less as a partner, and more as a disgruntled employee. A former member of the crew uncovered that, at this time, Janelle more and more with Christine off camera. It was like Christine was deprogramming her. The source explained their calls lasted for hours. Following one such phone call, Janelle went back to shooting with a glare of icy rage. She had obviously been taught something that shook her. What was it? Our guess, Christine took her through the reported corporate setup, showing her that the family pot Janelle had been contributing to for years, may not even exist. That all authority lay in Kody's LLC. Franklin Adler observed that for a person like Janelle, who took pride in her financial sophistication, such a realization would be crushing, a deep professional and personal betrayal. She would feel tricked. But Janelle is a fighter. As soon as she realized the game, she would have begun plotting her escape. Her strategy was clear: she had to liquidate, get cash, and sever her name from the Coyote Pass trap. That, we think, is why she moved into an apartment and ultimately broke up with Kody. She was cashing out. But her cash was locked up in the land. That is when, sources say, tense negotiations behind the scenes took place. With Christine's advice and probably legal representation, Janelle sat down with Kody with a stark ultimatum. Buy her out. Pay back the money from her sale of her Vegas house and her land investment. Or she would take Christine's route and go public. Two rebellions now faced Kody and Robyn, and the threat of exposure doubled. Experts opined that they must have tapped Patriarch Productions' coffers to settle Janelle, another enormous unexpected withdrawal. Franklin Adler indicated the cash flow emergency. They first sold almost $250,000 for Christine's benefit. Then, exactly 1 year later, Janelle insisted on her share. Presumably another huge six-figure payment. The so-called rainy day fund, the one supposedly funding their lifestyle and Robyn's shopping trips, was now hemorrhaging to pay for hush money. That prospect, insiders say, would have driven Robyn, the CEO in charge, into sheer panic. Robyn blubbered, "I don't get it. I don't understand what is going on." But considered in this light, her tears were not just about losing a family. They expressed the terror of a financial strategist seeing her empire disintegrate. They were the fright of someone who knew all the secrets of the underlying finances because she had helped hide them. Each time payment was sent to Christine and Janelle, it was less for her and Kody, pushing them one step closer to financial ruin. Finally released from Kody's business grip, Christine and Janelle finally had the one power they had always lacked, the power to compare notes. And Meri, waiting in the wings, was observing carefully. The three original wives were about to unite in a new bond, not one based on religion or shared husband, but in betrayal. What they discovered would expose the magnitude of the deception. The unholy alliance and the smoking gun liberated from Kody's grip, Meri, Janelle, and Christine began doing what they should have done long ago, talking openly, exchanging financial documents, recalling past conversations and slowly reconstructing the puzzle of the last 12 years. A friend of one of the wives said that the sessions were painful but affirming. Every woman had possessed a fragment of the truth. Christine contributed her knowledge from the courtroom fight over her house. Janelle, with her sense of business, went back to reuse tax returns she had co-signed years earlier without fully reading them. Meri brought institutional memory of several years' duration, making the subsequent financial discrepancies glaringly apparent, pooling their funds. The women allegedly retained a squad of attorneys and forensic accountants, and eventually, they discovered it, the smoking gun. The group discovered the original paperwork on which the family's loan-out company was incorporated. According to a legal source, as they had long been suspicious, Kody Brown was the sole member listed. And starting almost from the very first day, Robyn Brown's name was listed as a corporate officer. This was the confirmation. It wasn't just Kody's plot. Allegedly, it was a joint financial conspiracy between them both. Robyn wasn't merely a beneficiary. She had been an architect. Entertainment attorney Eliza Vance had this to say: "This is the kind of document that wins cases. It is unassailable evidence of the corporate structure that she is listed as an officer is explosive. It explodes the claim that she was just another wife and instead makes her a central player in running the entity that defrauded the others. That subjects her to direct liability." But that report was only the start, under court threat. The forensic unit obtained the company's bank statements, and what they revealed was a decade-long history of suspected abuse. There were two different patterns of spending. First, small, frequent salary payments to the first wives. Second, a flow of lavish purchases, tens of thousands of dollars, spent at upscale stores such as Victoria's Secret and Nordstrom, far beyond what their wages justified, high-end car lease payments for use by Kody and Robyn only. Expensive vacations and trips for them and their kids. Never depicted on the show as family vacations. Patriarch Productions' large loans to My Sister Wife's Closet, many of which were never paid back and eventually written off to cover losses, and most incriminating, find cash going directly from the LLC to pay for the down payment and mortgage. On Kody and Robyn's multi-million-dollar Flagstaff mansion, forensic accountant Franklin Adler clarified: "This is standard commingling of funds, and it indicates potential corporate wrongdoing. Spending company funds on personal expenses is a huge red flag, especially when commitments to other stakeholders or, in this instance, the very women bringing in the money are discounted." The attorneys can now contend that each of Robyn's shopping binges amounted to cash stolen from the others. It puts numbers to the betrayal. Now the wives had it all. The filings of the corporation, the bank tale, and the irrefutable history of deceit. For over a decade they had been the stars of a network hit show on TLC, generating tens of millions in revenue for the family brand and the network alike. And yet they had been treated as not much more than underpaid help begging for crumbs while the self-styled CEO and his designated partner,